This podcast is made possible by supporters like you. Mahalo. And by Atlas Insurance Agency, Hawaii's largest professional agency, helping Hawaii navigate insurance solutions since 1929. More at atlasinsurance.com.
Aloha, my kako. Welcome to a new episode of What School You Went. Start every conversation with that question. I'm Ron Mizutani, and today we're going to be talking with a world-renowned Hawaii and Hawaiian elder, speaker, cultural advisor, and so much more. A respected mentor and trained friend of mine for many, many years, Mr. Ramsay Taum. And today he is a practitioner, instructor of several Native Hawaiian practices, including oponopono, stress release, and mediation. Very pleased to welcome to PBS Hawaii my dear friend, Ramsay Taum. Aloha, Ramsay.
Aloha.
Welcome, brother.
Ron. Thank you so much.
Good to have you here, man. Before I continue, I ask every guest,
Yes.
what school you went?
Well, interesting enough, I think the same one you went to.
Oh, you and Damien.
Well, that was a lower campus.
Yeah. Oh, take it easy. One of the Farrington guys would say, what are we?
Yeah, I was fortunate to be at Kamehameha schools
Nice.
and continue to see the wondrous works that, come from the princess and all those that have been touched by her.
Indeed. Well said. And you have not only been a beneficiary of Princess Pohi, but you have shared that gift with others. And that she's proud of. I guarantee you that.
Thank you. I think that was heavily ingrained in us very early on in terms of service to our community. And,
you serve with a servant heart.
Yeah.
And I say that with all due respect.
Appreciate that.
You and I could talk story about all kinds of topics.
I'm sure we could.
Including some of our projects that we work together and
Yes.
and some of the challenges that are out there in the world when it comes to understanding what is pono, right?
That's correct.
Speaking of pono, I want to focus on ho'oponopono.
Yes.
And I know that's something that is very dear to who you are and what you share, your mana'o, but your deep immersion in this. What is ho'oponopono first?
Well, thank you, Ron. And I think you're spot on. It is really all about pono at some point, which is an alignment. And ho'oponopono is really that practice of restoring and or putting us into proper alignment, which is very different than fixing a bad thing. When we look at it from the perspective, at least from the mana'o and ike of Morna Nalamaku Simeona, who I endearingly refer to as Auntie Morna, the perspective that she shared and was really about how to create the preferred condition, how to remove the barriers, obstacles in our lives and those that prevent us from being fully in ourselves, so that we can be in service to others. As she would say, to be in the right place for your good and for the good of others. So the process of ho'oponopono, a cleansing process really, is about removing those barriers and obstacles that prevent us from actually being whole, which is actually the principle of aloha, right? To bring wholeness to oneself and to others. So it is a healing process on one hand, a cleansing process, but many refer to it as forgiveness, mediation. But I think in general terms, it's to make things right, to put things into proper order.
To get to that space, though, and it's a journey, right? Depending on what kind of pilikia you have. And I want to dive into that a little bit deeper. But before we do that, I've read through your work, me, myself, and I. I mean, there's no I in team. There's no I in we.
Right.
For us to get there, we have to get past the I and ourselves.
Yeah, the little I, the oau no me kaha'a, the little me, the I and the me. This is in reference to what I think we could more eclectically call the I am, the divine spirit. And ironically, when we get into that clarity, we can now speak to one another, not Ron to Ramsay, but I to I, na'au to na'au, your true identity to my identity, which is all connected back to one true identity. Ho'oponopono acknowledges that there may be multiple truths, your truth, my truth, but what is our truth? Right? And it subscribes to the idea that we all come from a universal source. Mm-hmm. That is the I, the one, the identity. So according to the teachings of Auntie Morna and the process, it's really what she called self-identity through Ho'oponopono. And that was really taking the ancestral practices that she was brought up in as a kahuna la'au lapa'au, a healer in her own right, but updating it for contemporary use so that people who are not of the koko, who don't have the benefit of growing up in the traditions, the ceremonies, the rituals, who could still benefit from the cleansing, which is done differently per family because it is by family, by place, like much of our traditions are, place-based and kupuna-based, family-based. But it was her process that really looked at that I, which is really being connected back to your divinity, God, Keakua. So that's the emphasis. So when we say me, myself, and the I, it acknowledges that there's me, that little me, the one that runs around every day, reflecting off of others and them on me. But then there's those three parts of us, which we call ourselves, which acknowledges what modern psychology might recognize as your spiritual, mental, and physical minds. That triune family, inner family. So there's me looking in at that family relationship, finding an alignment. And when we find that alignment, that's when a pono occurs, when you now become connected to, as we said, the lokahi, when you now are connected to the creative source and everything else. So that's the one that we like to refer to as lokahi. Yeah.
Right. Unity.
To unity. And it's and that's a spiritual underpinning, which actually comes from Auntie Pelahi, Paki, who was also one of my mentors, where the spiritual essence of the word lokahi isn't just to unify or to be unity, but is alo, to be in union with kahi, the one. See, so much of our kupuna's knowledge and wisdom is hidden in these spiritual undertones. Yeah.
Ramsay, I have to ask you because I'm trying to visualize, and I've been through the Ho'oponopono process, but to make it work, to reach that lokahi harmony, what if two parties, say for example, somebody says, okay, Kuma, we need your help. We have this group, we have this group, and they just cannot see eye to eye.
Right.
Do they have to be on the same, you talk about alignment, to reach harmony though? What if you have so divisive and two sides that are so divided and their own truths? How do you find that alignment? Is it sometimes impossible or is it always possible?
Yeah, I would say it's difficult if I'm trying to make somebody be
Correct
or wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm waiting for you to be wrong and me right, then yeah, that's going to be the challenge, which is why I refer to the ideas, what is our truth rather than our individual truths? And the object is, what is that? What's that common thing? And we can argue about our differences, but what's similar? What is the preferred condition where we actually have a relationship? Now, one of the misnomers is that we use Ho'oponopono for all things, and that's not necessarily the case. The process of Ho'oponopono from a familial standpoint was really about relationships, close relationships. You want to restore, maintain, and improve the relationship because from a functional standpoint, the idea is that we're all in the canoe and we don't throw people off the canoe. We need everybody to be there. And so the process of Ho'oponopono was that. Now we have large organizations and large communities and things like that. That may be difficult because it's not designed for that. However, it can be used by the individuals in those groups, which means I need to ask myself, what is it that I'm contributing to this pilikia, this problem? Why am I seeing this? So consequently, what Auntie Morna was really saying is that when you Ho'oponopono, when you do your own Ho'oponopono, I'm not here as the new sheriff in town to Ho'oponopono you, right? This isn't an external, it's an inside job. So if that's the case, when you have two poles that are really pulling apart, like small kid time, right? When we used to play tug of war, just let go, right? And the other bug will fall down and he's got to decide, do I want to engage again? Yeah. Part of it is that. A big part of that, actually, is that it's not so much getting the other person to concede as much as it is the individual me being able to say, please forgive me for whatever I've done to contribute to this. My ancestors and I, you and your ancestors, how do we make this right? And this acknowledges this continuum of eha and pilikia. This isn't just between you and me. You know? Your ancestors, my ancestors, your descendants, my descendants. So it shifts the energy a little bit. The mana is really more internal to say, I forgive you or ask you forgiveness. It doesn't release you from your kuleana to make right with your ancestors, with your kupuna. But it moves me out of the way and allows you to do that and allows me to move forward, which is very difficult for some people.
I can imagine. I mean, how do you get buy-in? I think at the beginning of this whole process, you still need, even if you have two sides that are so divided or have their own blueprint, as you've used the word in the past, they still have to want to.
Correct.
They still have to want to reach the same goal of reconciliation or harmony. I'm sure you've encountered many instances where that was really not the end goal for somebody.
That's correct.
Maybe somebody wanted to say, no, but I'm going to try to change their mind.
That's right.
Right? Because I have my project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether it be a construction development or even of something family. That's one question. Another question is, you talked about it being of Hawaiian, the koko in your blood. You don't have to be Hawaiian to understand oponopono.
That's correct. I mean, it's no different than electricity running through these lights.
Right.
And one room it's blue, another one is yellow. That's not the color of electricity. Spirit is the same way, right? It runs through us, and our personality is imbued in that spirit that comes through. So what you're really doing is cleaning that up, which is critical because unlike contemporary practices between mano y mano, man and man, this is a practice that acknowledges what we always acknowledge in our worldview, is that everything's related to spirit. So it's a spiritual practice. So if you're going to see on the physical what you want to see, you have to actually apply it in the spiritual. So it's really about communing at a different level. So if I want to see change outside the world, then I have to make the change inside the world, my world.
Your own.
So it's an inside job. As the kupuna would say, Auntie Morna, she says, the splinter you see in someone else's eye probably came from the log in your own. It's the only way you can recognize it. So consequently, before her transition in 1992, she kind of berated those of us that were in the room, her students and her, hamana. She says, the problems in the world outside are all in this room. If you perceive them, they're in you already. So the first step to creating peace in the world outside is to create the peace in the world inside. Clean up. Do that first before you start cleaning somebody else's backyard. And I think that is the underlying message. It's difficult because we live in a very three-dimensional world, very physical, a lot of control, need to manage things. This is about letting go and actually having a greater faith and relationship, as Queen Liliuokalani said, to know the unknowable, which I think she was really saying is when you know the divine, then you have access to all there is to know. It's not to be a know-it-all,
right?
But it's to have the faith to know that you are connected to something much bigger than oneself, which is the foundation to aloha. So they go hand in hand. Sorry, long answer to the short question.
That makes total sense. I just, for some reason, I drifted a little bit because I thought about my tutu, who always used to tell me, boy, when you point your finger to someone, what's happening?
Yeah.
You got several fingers pointing right back at you.
That's right.
So while you may feel like, hey, you wrong, Ramsay.
Yeah.
Truth is, maybe I got to search myself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, getting goosebumps
Well,
as if she's here.
It goes back to the tug of war,
Yes.
The only reason there's tension is because we're pulling.
Right.
If you let go, no more tension. A'ale. It's only when we pick up the rope again, because I want to prove that I'm stronger, that I'm right, then I drag you around through my life. And the challenge, of course, is some of the pilikia that we have others, they're not on planet anymore. They made a transition a long time ago, whether it was yesterday, 100 years ago, or what have you. As present as it is, it happened many, many generations ago. This process allows us then to begin to release and let go so that we're not carrying what we call ancestral trauma and delivering that to our descendants. If there's any reason to do that, if we don't have any purpose in our lives, it's to get in alignment so our ancestors see the product of their work and our descendants see where they come from. That's stepping in line. And I think the process, at least as I've experienced it now 3 or 4 decades, continues to do that and provides an alignment that many other things have not.
You know, I keep going back as well to development. And I know you get all kinds of people asking you for kukua, your skills and facilitate discussions. And most of them can be very successful, but those who are going to be approaching you with an agenda already, whether it be I'm trying to change the community's mind or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Hey, Ramsay, we got 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, they put a timeline on how quickly we can facilitate this into harmony.
Right.
I'm sure that, like, you just want to go, no, that's not what this is about.
Right.
Because there's no timeline to healing.
That's right.
It's going to happen when you allow it to happen. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but.
Yeah, I think there is, and this is a rough word for people, is to surrender.
Yeah.
Right. But when you deal with kupuna, there's this concept called the agendaless agenda, right? Is being able to state, as one navigator teacher suggested, can you see the island, right? To have that vision of what it looks like and allow yourself for it to come to you rather than you try to go to it. These are the same wisdoms that I think run across various disciplines. This is the same thing. To be driven versus to drive. It's letting yourself be in alignment, which means all I need to do is put myself on the proper trajectory, release all the things that are causing barriers and obstacles so that when it comes, I see it and recognize it for what it is, not for what I want it to be. And that's the shift in pono, to be careful what you ask for, to be in the right place at your right time for the good of you, yourself, and others, may not necessarily be where you exactly want to be, but exactly where you need to be.
Right.
And so that's a difficult reality for people, that if you subscribe to any of this, which is a higher spiritual existence, then we trust that divinity, Keakua, our kupuna, are helping to guide us because we've allowed them and asked them to. Still taking responsibility for our behaviors, but asking for guidance and being allowed to be guided.
Submit.
Yeah.
People get to the island different times.
That's
in the
correct.
process, correct? And even within the process of oponopono, somebody, one side, if you will get there sooner than the other, or may never get there. But ideally, you want both sides to understand that here we are in Lokahi in unity.
Equally
How do you-
important, Ron, I think it's not they're giving up their identity to be something else.
Yes.
But what is that true self? You know, and preferably it's something bigger than what you are, right? You're contributing to it, which is really the island way. Right? It's the island cultures that we're working together for we, not just for me. But we can't be we if it's only about me, right? And at some point in time, it's subscribing to and acknowledging that we work together as community. The individual that continues to subscribe to the me mentality is always going to be in that space. And so we create a space that allows them to be there so we can continue to move forward. There's too much energy trying to convert, those individuals. It's just loving them and providing with enough aloha so that at some point in time, they move into the we.
You travel the world, you travel the nation, sharing, this part of who you are deep inside from all your teaching from kupuna through the years. A lot of the people that you deal with are businesses as well. Some of them have their own agendas. Do you see the light go on? I mean, sometimes some maybe it can be a leader of an organization or of a project, et cetera, or even somebody who invited you to speak to groups. do you see the light go on sometimes and go, I understand what he's talking about?
That's when it's most rewarding,
Yeah.
I think, when there's an internal acknowledgement that this ancestral wisdom is as relevant today as it was then. And that in our evolution away from things, some of us have forgotten what that looks like. And so it's, oddly enough, using terminology that they're accustomed with, but shifting it and aligning it in such a way that they begin to recognize the difference between things such as accounting versus accountability. Yeah. We live in an accounting world, and yet we're being held accountable. And when we're in that world, we tend to look at references rather than reverence. See, these paradoxical at times, but these are the concepts that people begin to connect to. Fortunately or unfortunately, sometimes it takes to see the shift in the bottom line, because aloha, forgiveness, those aren't on your standard budget sheets. You see them, you look at it, no more. Oh, how much aloha cost? Right?
Yeah.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Because it's an outcome. It's not a process. It's not a mechanical thing. It's about meaning. So when I'm engaging these communities and these individuals, what we're looking for is meaning, shared meaning, co-created meaning, if you would. And I don't want to use terms that, floating around in the world these days, but that's kind of what people are hearing. Mm-hmm. We tend to support what we create. So when they can create these new conditions, then it's not me coming in and changing them. It's them making the change internally. But because they see the value in shifting into that accounting mode the accountability mode rather than the accounting mode, that's when I see a shift in belonging, right? There's a sense of belonging that wasn't there before when the focus was all on belongings, right, which tends to give us false membership. Yeah. So this process allows a corporate cultural shift in many ways without really having to do much. It's not a very costly shift because the investment is really in one's own identity. Yeah.
That's deep. But you know what? It makes so much sense. And I also think about, and then we're going to wrap it up in a bit.
Sure.
But you use the word oponopono and you think, this is Hawaiians only. Right? Or not going to work for us because I'm Japanese. Or, I believe in a higher presence, but it's not what you term as keokua. The bottom line is we all have ancestors.
That's correct.
And some of us value that element of who we are, maybe perhaps more than others. I don't know. I can only speak to what I've grown up learning about the value of kupuna and what I would been taught, whether it be in school or at home. But at the end of the day, no matter if you're German, if you're Chinese, if you're Haole, Caucasian, which we all are, check. You can understand that concept. And if
Absolutely.
you can reach harmony.
Exactly. Again, aloha, as much as it may come from here, it belongs everywhere, right? Same with Hawaii. Hawaii is everywhere when you can care for the air, the water, and the spirit of our relationships. You don't have to be in a physical place, and you don't have to come from a particular DNA line, if you would. The object is that we're all islanders, because if we subscribe to the fact that we're all indigenous to a place, and that place is island Earth, then we're all family at some point in time. This is the larger ohana. Now, some people won't want to subscribe to that because we want to maintain those differences. But the diversity itself acknowledges that we are all on the same island. And at some point in time, that is our canoe, right? As we say. It's traveling through the sea of space, and we all are on the same canoe. So ho'oponopono, like aloha, it's a universal practice. Just like air, it doesn't belong to anyone. It's the first breath we get when we come to the planet, the last thing we give back, but we don't own it. As much as aloha, ho'oponopono, and all of our practices are of and from Hawaii and our wonderful culture, I believe it was there to be shared and not kept.
Indeed.
All right? And what our job is, in many ways, is to demonstrate through our own stewardship of these practices and these cultural principles, as well as the aina itself, to demonstrate what our island Earth can be like. and what our relationships with mother, honua, looks like again. We're all children of the same mother. Some of us grew up in different rooms.
True. It's ha, right?
Exactly.
The gift of life.
Exactly.
The breath.
The breath, the life-giving breath.
Right. And that's what I started off this whole conversation with earlier, is the gift, the makana that you've been given and that you continue to share, Ramsay. And that's why I've always respected you immensely. I call you if I need something that I know that only you can provide.
I appreciate that.
And I really appreciate that you are willing to understand your kuleana of sharing that gift.
Yes.
Because some people, they think they own the air.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're trying. I mean, they're definitely trying.
I know plenty of people who think they own the air. They think they own the ocean. They think they own access to the public beach access. That's a whole different story, but really it comes from the same space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an interesting ethos, and I think it's that ethos that may be what needs to be shifting. Yeah, and I'm just so grateful that I had kupuna who were able to articulate and share, and they recognized there was an empty coconut in front of them, and they managed to fill it up. I would like to share with others just to think that kupuna is not just your DNA elders. Kupuna is a teacher, even a tormentor, mentors and tormentors, anyone that really helps to create who you are today. And so I would ask people not to get trapped in just looking at their DNA line, the genealogy. But kupuna are those individuals who made an influence in who you are, who you're becoming, and who eventually you will be as a kupuna yourself. Yeah.
Yo, we kupuna already, brother. You know that, eh?
That's what I heard.
We left uncle status long time ago.
I know. Somebody gave me uncle, you like one senior coffee? I said, what? When did I become that?
Yeah.
I'm older, but when did I become elder?
Yeah.
It's like...
But
thanks for the reminder.
You're very welcome, brother. I remember the first time when somebody called me uncle, I wanted to crack him, and then now I'm kupuna Ron. Hey, put the lime in the coconut and feel it fill it all up. Brothers, thanks for stopping by.
No, I
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next time, I want to talk story about lua.
Absolutely, let's do it.
The way of the Hawaiian warrior.
Okay,
bone-breaking martial arts. But there's much more to lua.
Absolutely.
All right, mahalo nui for joining us, folks. Join us next week. Another episode of What School You Went. Until then, ahui ho.
What School You Went is a PBS Hawaii production. Music by Taimane Gardner. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and tell your friends. You can find us on pbshawaii.org and everywhere you get your podcasts.